Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Tuesday, August 12th, 2025 is the date. Local time here in California, 10:36 a.m. Latest activity here on the globe shows a 2.8 earthquake there across Alaska. A little bit of larger movement here early this morning, just shy of all that deeper activity we seen yesterday around the Papua New Guinea area with a 6-pointer. Let's see what we got going on here. 6.3. I believe this originally came in as a 6.5. A little bit of a downgrade, about 1:30 in the morning local time, my time that is. Since then, a number of aftershocks there around the 4 and 5 range, but of course, a lot more than what the USGS is reporting. They only show 4.5 and above, but good handful of earthquakes there. Also some deeper, look at that deep earthquake to the west of that region. Yesterday, we had a number of deep earthquakes here. Roughly around the Molucca Sea area to the west of today's Papua New Guinea earthquake. So larger movement striking over there overnight. Since then, newer, deeper activity here to the west. That is a super deep earthquake right around the Banda Sea area. In fact, we have 3 deep earthquakes in this area. 4.1 from yesterday and then 2 today. Back-to-back, 5.4 and a 4.5, 325 miles deep into this area. This region can get some big earthquakes. Do have to watch this deeper activity. I was talking about yesterday how the deeper movement out here should trigger larger earthquake activity in the region, and that came true overnight there. Now with this larger, deeper activity around the Banda Sea, we definitely need to watch these areas. I'm thinking maybe to the west here. Potentially the Java Trench area looks like a spot that we could see some uptick going on in terms of larger movement. There's not a whole lot of migration along that plate boundary yet, but that deeper activity could strain the areas to the west. We'll watch that closely. Down across Australia as well, 3.6 offshore it looks like. A little odd earthquake. Pair of 5s back here across the Vanuatu and the Tonga area. That pretty shallow earthquake activity. Quiet zone today, the Kermadec Trench southward towards New Zealand, so we do have to watch that. New Zealand definitely on the list here in terms of maybe some future large earthquake activity. A lot of time has passed there. We are getting a little swarming going on here around the Japan Trench, south of the swarming, earthquake activity, the aftershock sequences there from the 8.8. That's up here. But we're getting a little bit of movement down south here. 5.4 and a 7, or 4.3 about 7 o'clock this morning. Watch this middle point boundary. This is an area right about here that has not ruptured in quite a while. And a lot of times similar to how we look at the Peru-Chile Trench over there, that major subduction zone. We've seen an unzipping pattern before where there's large earthquake activity, and if there's enough time and stress built up, it will take a route further away from the previous earthquake activity, resulting in larger movement. For example, it'd be down south here along this area. We've had a number of earthquakes out there. A couple of these were following the 8.8 there in the Kamchatka area. This was about a 500-kilometer rupture from that 8.8, but there's still a pretty good, decent segment here that has not had any rupture in quite a while. That looks like it's at the southern end here of the Kuro-Kamchatka Trench. So watch this section right here. That could be a big earthquake event if it does decide to go right there. And on occasion, when we have these 8-pointers, considering it's been 4 years since our last one up to the 8.8 that struck last month, on occasion we do get multiple large events in a year's time period as far as anything above 8.0. So we'll watch that area. There's a number of regions out here that are fairly well primed for an 8-pointer. Also, that includes California. 8.1 is the expected magnitude there across the San Andreas Fault, the southern branch, when it finally decides to go. Now, got to remember, there's been a number of years here since the last rupture along the extreme southern end. That's going to be that darker area. It's been over 300 years. The last decent earthquake on the southern branch with a partial rupture was back in 1857, resulting in a 7.9. And regular intervals run about 150 to 180 years, and we're past that in terms of almost all the San Andreas Fault. excluding the northern segment up here. 1906 was a big 7.9, but we're getting close, I have a feeling. Right now, not seeing too much there on the map for California, but it's coming. Just got to be prepared. Mostly smaller microquake activity out here. No unusual swarms, no unusual patterns going on, just a typical earthquake sequences there across many different faults there in Southern California. The Bay Area got a handful of smaller quakes, nothing above 2.5. Got some movement along the Calaveras Fault and the Hayward Fault here, but relatively quiet in terms of anything of a moderate to large events. 2.7 up in Lake Almanor area, 2.1 as well. There is a fault that runs directly underneath Lake Almanor, a newly discovered fault as well. This region had a, I think it was a 5.4 here a number of years back, directly underneath the lake. I went up here to check this little dam to see if it did any damage, but no damage. But looks like that area is definitely stirring things up a little bit. A couple smaller quakes. Nothing going on here across the Cascadia for now. I'm starting to think that they're not reporting the smaller quakes that are happening out there across Petrolia, on that Petrolia station that sits there in Northern California, because it just seems a little odd. Cascadia tremor activity, by the way, is still elevated at 430 epicenters. This is from yesterday. A little bit there in Northern California, the extreme southern end of the Cascadia. Most of it up here into the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, and the South Oregon coast there. Decent number. We'll watch that later tonight once the update comes out for the tremor counts for the day. They did add a couple earthquakes up here yesterday. This is after the fact, right? Look at the 0.7, 0.4, 0.7. Some of these earthquakes I pointed out, they decided to go back and report a couple of the ones that took place yesterday. This was absent of earthquake activity yesterday, but I've been kind of talking about how they're getting earthquake activity up there and nobody's reporting it. And by the way, if you didn't see the update last night, they're claiming a lot of the earthquake events, the seismograph signatures that we're seeing that really look like earthquakes, I'm 99% certain they're earthquakes, claiming that they're not earthquakes, but things like rocks falling, ice breaking off, and landslides and strong winds. Yeah. I beg to differ on that. I know what wind looks like. I know what thunderstorms look like on a seismograph station. Falling rocks are not going to give a well-defined signature of an earthquake. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about here. Just real quick. I won't go too much into it because I did cover this last night. But when we go over here to Mount Rainier, they added a couple quakes there from yesterday. Here's the seismograph station here, okay? And this one is still operable. But these are not falling rocks, ice breaking off, or high winds. Those are earthquakes, okay? And I'm going to show you a comparison here. This is the last, goes to the afternoon time period, late afternoon yesterday. So it's current. Definitely earthquake activity, and we'll point out those little quakes that they're picking up as well. But if we compare that to last month during the height of the swarm, not as intense, but you know what? Those are earthquakes, and that's what earthquakes look like on seismograph stations. On seismograph stations, rockfall or anything like that may look something like that, a little thicker signal. But those are well-defined signals of an earthquake on a seismograph station. Again, not as active as what it was last month, but we've had more than a couple earthquakes that they claim happened since the 1st of August. So let's go ahead and go find these earthquakes that they're talking about here. Let's go with a little 0.7. That was yesterday afternoon around 4:48. 4:48. So we do have to go back to the previous UTC time. 4:48. That's going to be awfully close, excuse me, to right about here. So that is one earthquake that they counted. But what about these other ones, these bigger ones that are showing up more prominent? So that's, if that's a 0.7, then these have to be above a 1 or so. Okay, let's find the other one. The last one this morning, very shallow earthquake, 0.4. That's towards the northeastern side of the volcano, Mount Rainier. and that was at 0422. So let's go see if we can find that. 0422 is going to be right here. 0422 would be halfway or so. This is the 5 o'clock hour, right? And these are two well-defined quakes. I'm guessing it's going to be this one right here is what they're counting. But why ignore all these other ones that are obviously earthquakes? You know, I don't believe those are rocks or ice breaking off or high winds. I know what those look like. We've seen them before on Yellowstone seismograph stations, and I point those out. These are earthquakes. But that's why I'm going to be focusing more on the live raw or the recorded raw data, because that doesn't lie. You know, this is a interference right here. It happens every, you can go back here and look, it happens every like 18 hours or so. But those are earthquakes, folks. Those are definitely earthquakes. And what's really weird is, go back to the map here. Oh, I did not mean to do that, but we'll go here. Is that the seismograph station here to compare it to, if these are indeed earthquakes, and some of the ones and higher are picked up here across this one. But last night this was offline for some reason, and it's still offline. I don't know why they took it offline. The data went off about midnight or so, not last night, but the previous night. So, and it hasn't come back on. I mean, they haven't really had any major weather up there, I don't think. Let me go check out the windy map here real quick. You know, I can understand storms or something coming through, but I don't see anything in the area. The wind is not that incredible up there. So I don't know why it would go offline like that. That's a little suspicious there. Similar to how, you guys remember a couple days back here. I'm glad they tuned it back up, but a couple of days back, they turned down the amplitude here so low where you couldn't even see what was going on. Let me see here. I'll show you guys when it took place. Which one are we on? Let me go back here to the map and see where I'm at real quick. I'm talking about this one. This is the one that they turned down. Is it around the 7th? Oh yeah, see? Look at that. The amplitudes. There was a couple days there of low amplitude readings, meaning that you can't even see anything showing up on the graph. Why they did that, I don't know. But it looks like that happened on the 4th or so. And there's still earthquake activity that was occurring on that day. But it looks like it has picked up. There was a number of days, obviously. Hello. Why did that? And it's not offline because you can still see what looks like little earthquakes here. But, you know, where's the amplitude at? Crank that baby up. Let's see some of these seismograph stations here, the readings. But I'm glad they put it back to normal. There's still earthquake activity occurring here. What defines them to pick a little bitty one over more prominent features here on the graph? I don't know. So, they at least reported 3 out here, but there's way more than that. Also a little swarm over there at Yellowstone. This is around the Hebgen Lake area. West of the Hebgen Lake. Pretty lengthy fault system that runs here. Not around the Yellowstone caldera. These may have been older calderas as the North American plate moved over the hot spot. That's a whole nother story, but current caldera sits here in northwestern Wyoming. This activity is occurring away from there in a little swarm fashion, about 12 earthquakes or so. Some from yesterday, some from today. Nothing big going on. But we do have a little bit of earthquake activity in the area. Let me see if we can find it there on the USGS map. And Yellowstone, check this out real quick. I'll show you guys. They did the same thing with the amplitude, but on all of their stations. So this is a site called isthisthingon.org. These are just simply links to the official data from the University of Utah. But look at this. The amplitudes are squashed completely. What good does this do? We can't even see if Bigfoot was running through the hills up there. You know, somebody messed with something here. So USGS, it seems like when you go to the USGS page, the volcanoes page, and then click on Yellowstone up here and go to their seismograph stations, you think it would be the same thing. But their amplitudes are up a little bit higher. So we'll go over here to this. Well, that one's offline. Let's go check out the Hebgen Lake Estates. I guess there's none directly nearby. That one's offline. There's a couple of the earthquakes showing up. Not super local. They look a little bit thicker in terms of the seismograph reading. If this seismograph was more, a little bit closer to the swarm, it'd be a well-defined spike. But it does look like there was, a number of earthquakes over there. A couple more this morning as well. And that's up there towards the west. That station really not picking them up. This one is picking up the S waves there from that big 6.3 in Papua New Guinea. That's why the lines are all drawn out like that. But when you go over here to the Yellowstone stations, I guess these are normal. They still look like the amplitude needs to be turned up a little bit. There's a couple small earthquakes there locally to Yellowstone, but nothing big going on. That one's squashed. I don't know what's going on with the data. Whose idea it was to turn down the amplitudes. This is from last 24 hours. Check out the date. June 27th. Hello. So I don't like I just don't like when people mess with things out there. Anyway, so at least we have one or two working stations that we can go to look at the data. But if those go offline, I'm going to start emailing people. Okay, let's see here. I don't think anything big going on up there right now. It would show up, obviously, on some of the ones that we are able to access. This is just a little swarm off of that fairly lengthy fault. Remember, this area had a big earthquake. Let's see what it was real quick. I think it was up in the 7 range, but it was fairly recent in terms of geological time. Let's go up here around Yellowstone and see what we got here. Was that right? Let's see here. I may be wrong. I'm right. Kind of hard to tell these maps sometimes. But 7.2 earthquake. That was looks like it's east of that lengthy fault system that's seen a little swarm right now. That was around the Hebgen Lake fault system. 7.2 back in 1959. Wow. A couple other larger earthquakes as well around the region, but really nothing here in terms of larger movement back where we're seeing that swarm. I guess maybe on the northern side of this fault system. That was back in 1947, a 6.1. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. Oil fields of Texas, nothing new there. A couple of smaller earthquakes out there around the Smoky Mountains, about 1 o'clock or so, my time. 1.8 and a 2-pointer this morning. For the rest, see, look at the time went down here a little bit. I need to adjust that. For some reason, it does that. Try to keep it the last 24 hours up here on the globe. Pretty quiet out here across the Middle America Trench and South America. I'm thinking all these quakes over there across the Turkey area are starting to mess with my counts here on the globe. Still seeing a bunch of aftershock activity there around the Turkey area from that 6-pointer a couple days ago. Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. Again, we'll watch this area here around the Indonesia area. Big earthquake this morning. That resulted in a super deep a couple of deep earthquakes there further to the west. So watch that region here. We may see some larger activity around the Java Trench or in the vicinity of this deeper quake. All right, space weather activity real quick. Nothing major going on. Looks like we're starting to drop a little bit in terms of the flaring activity. We do have those massive sunspots there. Off on the western limb, just barely visible, barely be able to see the magnetic arches there, but the sunspots themselves are off, out of sight, out of mind. We're left with a couple different regions here. I'm watching this area. It is flaring currently with some C-flare activity. That's going to be 4172. That was last night. This is the current imagery. A little bit of complexity here within the sunspot region. Also back over here as well. But I don't see anything as massive as the areas that just departed off there on the western limb. But I suppose we could get maybe an M flare or two from these regions. Not a whole lot left out there on the eastern limb for now. Overall flare threat right now at about 55% chance for M flare, X flare around 10% chance or so. No major auroras there in the forecast for now. We do have a coronal hole facing us, but it doesn't look like it's doing too much of anything as far as the amplified geomagnetic forecast. Nothing coming in for that. Quick glance at the next close approach asteroids here. And really don't see anything of any close approaches. All these are millions of miles away. That's fairly safe. I guess this one's somewhat close. 160-foot airplane-size asteroid, but that's still outside the Earth-Moon distance. Coming in August 17th there. Newly discovered. Storm Prediction Center for severe weather. Not a whole lot added onto the map here for severe weather. We do have a marginal risk, but I don't see anything for tornado activity. A little bit of wind, and really not much hail threat either. So it's kind of a simple day. Tomorrow, a little bit more severe up around South Dakota, it looks like. Added a 2% for some tornado wind and a little bit of hail threats out there for tomorrow. Let's go ahead and check out the hurricane potential out there in the Atlantic. That's been kind of a hot topic here recently. See what the weather models are showing today for that tropical system. Still taking it way north off and well offshore here. So that is good news. It's kind of following the path that it's taken here in the last several runs. So we'll continue to watch that though. All right, seismograph stations out there all look pretty quiet for now. You guys have a good one. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll catch you guys back out here for the Tuesday night update. Have a good one. Stay safe out there.